So this is gonna be my palette. Probably not all of it, but I just want to have all the options on the table. I like the approach of just trying and get some quick results, sketching colors, and they're going to be wet, and then applies the next color on top of that. That way you can establish a lot of light and shadows pretty easily, pretty quickly, and also the blendings do look somewhat decent, and I feel like the intensity also comes out more, instead of trying to layer on top of that, which we still will do afterwards. It's a bit, sometimes it is a bit hit and miss, but we will see. So I don't have any clear I just have a rough idea on how I want it to look and what I'm going to add after I'm done. But it's gonna be more of a less planned approach. I'm just going to go with the flow. We'll see how it turns out. And then people have been asking what pigments I use. I do have the MIG. I have found some random pigments that I still use. For example, PK Pro, they just probably sell you just artist pigments. But since I want an orange finish and a really intense finish, I think I'm going to also use these. Okay, so what I wanted to go for was the fantasy that says Martian Dust, but I feel like this one, the one that I have from PK Pro, is even better maybe. I'm just quickly going to show you. Yeah, here you can see I have the old rust and light rust pigments here too. But yeah, you can get all kinds of pigment. But yeah, also artist pigments work. I'm leaning towards this as a base color, and then we will see. But yeah, the idea behind it is to have some rusted planetary surface. Yeah, also I have a few darker ones, black smoke for example. But again, also I'm not too shy to apply some paint on top of the pigments and then go back in with pigments and so on. I'm leaning towards making this my base, although it might be a bit too light. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. We'll just risk it. I mean, it's just a base. We can still paint over that. But just so that I have them lined up, I'm gonna try to also have my highlight colors here. Right, so yeah, this is gonna be my shadow color. Also some armor brown, because that always works pretty good with stuff. And then I'm gonna decide between two colors. Maybe just go for this orange. Yeah, I think that can work. Maybe we're going to need a mid-tone somewhere. Yeah, this can work. Okay, and I'm not too worried about black base coats. Just have a bit of a desaturated color in, doesn't matter too much. Need to work quickly here, so that we can still apply some more color on top of this. I think I like the color. Let's see, just mix this. Go for some shadow. For shadow here. I think we could even use a bigger brush here, but I also feel like I want to retain some control. Just blending together some colors. I don't want to use any of my better brushes for this, really. Okay, maybe the edges. I'm also going to move, or also going to tint with that darker tone. Let's bring back some intensity up here. Okay, so next step, starting up here. I'm also probably gonna touch these with some of the lighter color. Right, so for these parts, I think I want to dab in some of the lighter, well, some more yellow, I guess. Just to make them lighter. Some shading. And maybe bring back a bit of the base color here. Okay, so we are going to leave this to dry. And if I have some black shining through here, that doesn't bother me too much, because this is more in the shadows anyway. Okay. Right, so this is going to be the base color that we're going to work with. I just want to intensify the edges. I don't really want black to shine through there. So just to have some even coverage there. Right, and we have some red color running down here. I'm not too worried about that. We'll just use it happy little accident style. and work with it. If we don't like it afterwards, we can still go back in and change it, like shade it down or whatever. I'm just going to apply a bit of a mid-tone, more neutral, to both the bone and the wood. Okay, so I should have been a bit braver up here, I think, and so I'm just gonna apply some light while the paint is still somewhat blendable. Okay, just want to put in some intensity, like I said. Yeah, I think I'm going to apply the first shadow color as a wash again to get some of the shadows back and intensify them. I think I'm also gonna start using black soon. So I want this to dry first. Disappear before I apply some shadows. I'm already itching to do so, but it should probably dry first so that we don't lose intensity. So like I said, just here in the middle where the miniature will go, I'm going to darken this a bit. Also these middle parts and some shadows once again. So Armor Brown brings out red tones pretty intensely, because it also has that tiny bit of red in it that acts like a filter. Oh, we actually lost this part here. Huh. Oh, well, it just didn't want to be, I guess. More diluted on the outside of these. Then just add a few shadows to the broken earth. Okay, I think I want a lighter color in there. Right, so just now we're working on contrast. And I'm using the highlight colors on all different areas of the miniature, well, the base. And I do this to draw it together. Because, for example, that bone, if it's lying there in that environment for a while, it's definitely gonna take on some of that oxide, for example, and also get discolored a bit. Right, so yeah, the reason why I do like the bone color from Vallejo Air is because it's transparent and it's easy to create interesting bone structures and bone color. Let's see, should we maybe do it like this? Okay, I think that's even better. Since I'm working down here all the time anyway. Okay, then some tiny hints of light in this piece of wood. Don't want to overdo it. Let's see. Don't want to overdo it in order not to make everything too similar, but like I said, since those parts are lying there for a while already, they're definitely gonna be discolorized. I really like that orange. I think I want more of it in there, especially since we are probably gonna hit the whole thing with an orange pigment anyway. I think we can get away with some of that just shining through all the other colors. And if it's too intense, yeah, just shade it down again. I think that's the plan here. And yeah, stuff that we do on miniatures and blending also works on bases, of course. So what I mean is we have a rather dark base here, or base color here, and I did try to highlight it up towards the edges. And now I'm taking a mid-tone and I'm just establishing that mid-tone right here in the gasp middle, and that way we get some gradient going. But we keep the intensity here in the middle, and the lighter areas out here. And yeah, I'm just using a, I mean, it was a good brush once. It's a Raphael, obviously, but that one just got worn out, and I use it for smoothing my clay usually. But it also does work as just a rough applicator when working with bases where you don't really need to be super blending, and where you don't want to use your best brushes anyway. Okay, so a bit of a mixture of dry brushing and, yeah, I mean, basically it's dry brushing just with a wetter color. Okay, this should give us a bit more of an intense mid-tone. And then focus on the edges again. Right, and just putting in some light into the smaller details that, you know, sort of, if you have a large area, it just reflects light more globally, but if you have a tiny piece of something, yeah, I mean, just like, for example, here, this is a smaller feature that has a bit more sharp corners, you have some more intense light reflecting there. And we want the same with these elements here. So also these stones here, just gonna touch them with some bone color. That should be our light and reflections. And since we have a few edges pointing up here, we also want to touch those. Then again, bring back some of the light that we would have reflecting off of edges in the wood too. Use some more pure aged white, I guess. Not overdoing it in order to not lose any of that mid-tone that we reapplied. Yeah, so I think I want this to be more intense, so we'll just lay out the base of this and then just go over it with the orange again. That way we don't lose saturation but we get more intensity and contrast. Yeah, I feel like this is a bit of a struggle to get some light back out, but still don't desaturize it too much. But I guess like this, it's not too bad. Just, you know, repeating the 2 steps of darkening it and then going back in with the orange. Alright, okay, one more part with orange. Yeah, I guess just slowly building contrast here pays off. Yeah, I kind of want the result to be somewhat light, even though we're starting from rather dark. So I guess this is a good approach. Just slowly building that orange back up. Maybe some more here. I feel that works pretty good over just the dark armor brown that we have here. It's not going to be the main focus of, yeah, it's not going to be the main focus anyway. So we will get away with a bit less smoother blendings. Mix in some of the base tone. To mix it up. Yeah, I guess that makes for some interesting color. Yeah, so just gonna paint in some detail that isn't necessarily there. But that will look better in the end, or make it more detailed and therefore more realistic. Okay, so having those little lines pop out a bit makes the structure, like I said, more three-dimensional. So yeah, you could achieve that somewhat by dry brushing, but I feel like using controlled lines makes it less, how to say, it just looks better. I can't really describe it. I mean, maybe because you can, with dry brushing, you don't have a consistent line, you just have some dots in a row. Yeah, I can't really describe it any better. It just, in my opinion, it does look better if you go back in and do a few of those highlights just by brush. Especially here, I feel like that comes out pretty well. Yeah, so again, we did most of the work already. We were just establishing some of that red. And since this is a miniature thing, we now have to exaggerate contrast. That's why I'm putting in some lighter color by brush in a more controlled way. It helps with three-dimensionality, and yeah, like I said, we have to exaggerate certain areas because this is a representation of something that is like 70 times larger. I think you can see how it gets a lot more three-dimensional by applying those micro details. And yeah, I think in the past I did a few bases where I didn't do that, and they didn't feel like as complete as they do now. So that's something that I learned recently by just, you know, trying it. I didn't feel too happy about my bases ever since, and I think just investing the extra amount of work, like yeah, putting in some highlights like this is very worth it. And when you overdo it, you can just always wash over it and reduce it again. Of you know, like I said, in the morning I felt like crap and I didn't feel like streaming at all. All I wanted to do was lie in bed, but then I had breakfast and it was better. So we just started a bit late, but at least we're getting some stream time in. Also, I did get yeah, maybe that screwed me up again. Okay, just covering the corners here, not wanting them too intense. Well, intense is good, but not too. More like subtle strokes. And not consistent lines, but more like dots in a row. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. I can live with that. Pneumonia. Okay. Yeah, again, I kind of, like I said, it started in my lungs. It was just barely feelable, and I didn't get any fever or stuff like that. Just felt exhausted. I mean, you guys know it. I'll be celebrating like I never celebrated before. Once that thesis is done. Because it's kind of always on the back of my head, and with everything that I do, that kind of sucks. Okay, let's see. Just gonna add 1 or 2 more details up here. Just subtle. To have a bit more contrast. I mean, it's a bit of a two-edged sword. On the one hand, I wouldn't have had to stop teaching if I did my degree before. Then on the other hand, maybe I would, be further along with my business if I had, started back when I was teaching. I don't know. Hard to tell. But yeah, at the moment I just want it to be over, and yeah, so I can finally focus on something that makes sense, because just writing that crap, it doesn't make me a better teacher, and it takes away from sculpting and painting time. Yeah, it's just some crap that you have to power through, and that doesn't really add anything to the body of knowledge for the world. And no personal gain either. So yeah. The Peace Island. Pneumonia. Who did you learn to paint from when you started miniature painting? Everyone and no one, I'd like to say, because I just started painting, and then I just read a lot of tutorials that were online. I mean, it's like we're talking 16 years ago, 15, 16 years ago. There was no massive voodoo, no... what else do you get? Yeah, there was no Patreons, and all that stuff. So yeah, I just looked at heavy metal stuff and read about blending and layering, and then I just tried to mimic results of other people, and I tried to be better than those people too, so yeah. I learned more from just, trying stuff and failing and retrying and so on, than really learning from someone in particular. So that was like the first 4 years maybe, so from 2001 to 2005, and that was the age of the French painters. So 2015 they kind of started to apply techniques that came from traditional miniature painting, so from the historical world to the miniature to the fantasy and science fiction world. And like zenithal lights, that was never a thing before, because everyone was just edge highlighting like Games Workshop did. Yeah, so they influenced me a lot back then, definitely. I mean, yeah, I just tried to, develop my own style, but also keep an open mind towards what I liked in other people's work, body of work. And then try to learn those things, try to analyze those miniatures and get behind what they did. Just constantly learning from everyone and improving on your own. I guess that's been my thing. Like I said, I always try to keep an open mind towards a lot of influences. And I mean, nowadays I just try to look at reality as much as I can. Okay, so what I'm doing now, I just apply a bit of contrast. For example, areas here where there's a lot of light hitting with, or just mixing with some of the base tone. I try to get some intensity back there. I think I also want to do this here. And then next, I think I'm going to move directly into applying some pigments. See if there are any areas that I still want to touch up on. Maybe, let's see, is this black still usable? Look at that, it is. Yeah, so I'm going to mix the armor brown with some black and just maximize some shadows here so that we have even more contrast. Always, you know, if you can push your contrast, it's always worth to do it, usually. Like, for example, I didn't really shade any of these things. But yeah, to answer that question, I didn't have a single person really that I learned from. I mean, you know, it's always a bit of, sometimes you will stop progressing and be satisfied with what you do. But yeah, back in 2002, 3, 4, I had a lot of people that were learning from me. So for example, also Jarhead says he was always waiting for me to post stuff, and nowadays I feel like I learn a lot from him instead, or the other way around, you know. So yeah, I guess it's a bit of a giving and a taking eventually. Sometimes you learn from someone, sometimes someone else teaches you something. Okay, just going to be putting some emphasis on those cracks. Hey Warmonger, how's it going? By the way, I do have my own emote like that. Just silly Twitch things. Hey Vulpine, would you rather have sausage links for fingers or sweat mayo? I have no idea. Which one does help me with painting and sculpting? Okay, so maybe just a bit more darkness here. Just to distinguish those two parts, the larger rock from the area here in front. I'm still thinking whether I should color those a bit differently. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna apply a bit of a hint of yellow there, not too much orange. Is that visible on screen? Yeah, so you can see here there's some more of that beige yellow going on. maybe there's a bit of a different sediment there, and not just the red from the rocks. Just changing the mid-tone a bit. Yeah, so that distinguishes the two elements a bit. So yeah, I still don't know if sausage links for fingers or sweat mayo, which one of the two does help me with painting. Because that's what I'm going to be aiming for. Okay, so I'm going to leave this more subtle, the part with the twig, and I'm just going to bring out the bone by adding a bit of white, not overdo it, but just to have it stand out. Not to mix up my brushes, so this is the one that I use for the rough work. Just putting some white on the corners. Last dots of white with pure white. Okay, and then hopefully this stands out a bit more. This could be really, really intense. I mean, just compare. The intensity is way higher than what we have here. But it could be interesting, so let's see. I think I want a really dry brush for this. Let's just clean up here a bit. Also needed to dry. Let's see, I also want some pigment fixing. Smells a bit funky. Okay, so it works on acrylics. Okay. Okay, there's still some wet areas. I don't really like that. But we can fade it out so that it just looks like dust that accumulated in those areas. Okay, so you really don't want to work with wet pigments, because then the effect gets a bit lost. And you're just going to smear it over the base. Yeah, so I'll just try that, sorry. Okay, this should be better. See that our brush is dry again. And typically I will not clean my brush between steps, because like I said, you really don't want too much moisture there. and they will just slightly tint the area below. Can try to get them carefully stuck in those cracks. I'm not going to cover all of them so that we still have some contrast left. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy with that result already. See, we can try to mix it up a bit by just applying some of them up here. And also in some of those areas that are rather dark. Maybe there was a storm or something like that, and some pigment, well, some dust got stuck there. Always try to look at how your base is made up of, or what features your base has, and put them in some areas where you would have accumulating maybe water that brings some earth and dust with it, and it accumulates there, and then it just stops and rests there and dries up, and then the dust is just stuck there. I just don't really like pigment fixer because it takes away a bit of that just dusty feeling. So we'll see. We'll try it carefully up here, and usually you will apply it with an airbrush, but you know, I'm not gonna just take out the airbrush just for that. So ideally the whole dust just soaks it up and doesn't move away too much. And unless we were light to, this pigment fixer should dry up clear, so you can also use it on top of scale colors. Yeah, I think it works. Just have to let this dry again, and then hopefully we will have the dust still intact. Yeah, they're good for when you want intensity back, because you know, highlighting colors can desaturate colors pretty, or highlighting in general can desaturate colors pretty quickly. So if you want some a dusty finish and also some intensity back, like this intense red here, I feel like it works pretty good with our themed base. So yeah, never use pigments with your good brush and pigment fixer. I think I'm going to go over it again with some pigments because I really want the dusty feeling back. that we lost. So just gonna be careful not to apply too much. Fade everything out a bit more. Just a hint of pigment on the others. On the other elements. Yeah, I really like that. Sort of, you know, if it was raining there, it would wash out a bit. Yeah, looks good. I'm guessing this is just artist pigment. It also comes from different manufacturers, for example MIG, Ammo, or AK Interactive. They also have pigments. Yeah, but your local art store also has them. And yeah, just to get some intensity back, looks pretty good. And if you want, you know, an earthy finish or like a dusty finish, there's different tones. You can also get them in gray, and I mean there's a lot of colors, and especially if you go to artist pigments, which they use to mix their own colors really. Yeah, you can get a lot of different colors.